Hey, what's up? It's Jesko again from AcousticsInsider.com, where I teach home studio acoustic treatment techniques for audio professionals, but without all the voodoo. Welcome back to another YouTube comments knowledge bomb special on my PSI AVAA C214 review videos. So if you haven't seen those yet, I basically reviewed the PSI AVAA C214 in 10 different studios over the past 2 years. And so I made 3 videos about it. The main review, the interview with Yvan Becher, the R&D manager at PSI Audio, and also a feedback session with some of the engineers in whose rooms I tested the units. So if you haven't seen those yet, I'll link all of them in the description. And as well, if you want to support the channel, I've also got an affiliate link down there where you can purchase your own AVAA C214 or anything else from the Thomann store. If you want to support me and what I do here at Acoustics Insider, that's a great way to do it. But with that, let's jump into these questions that popped up under the 3 videos on the PSI AVAA C214. So this first one is from DJ Loris. What a magical device it is. Very great RT60 improvements. I have a deeper question regarding room number 3 or your own room type. In this type of room, mid-size 20 to 30 meters squared, when one wall is a big window and wanting to keep the light and the window, wouldn't it be better to have the window in another place of your listening position? In other words, to spin the listening position so the window would be the back wall or side wall? Or is this already good orientation of the listening position? Just adjust the speaker position in the room depth, maybe a panel in between the speakers, not so much blocking the heating radiator and window and also the ceiling cloud. I'm guessing a bigger 5 to 7 meters squared ceiling cloud could improve the response massively in the current position, but as planning to adapt a similar room, I kind of don't want a direct sunlight behind my screen. I am raising these questions. I mean, sure, this is a good point. Obviously, ideally, you don't want a window there, but you got to remember that you don't really get to choose the listening position in a home studio. The room basically chooses it for you through its low-end response, its particular room mode pattern. And the only way to get a decent bass response in any small home studio room is to place your listening position in a spot where all those room modes balance out against each other. And oftentimes that means you don't have a choice for where windows, doors, whatever are in relation to your setup, because that's the only place where you're going to get a good low end, right? So sure, in an ideal world, you'd want to move your window, have it somewhere else. But unfortunately, if you set your priorities on bass, on sound, if that is your highest priority, which it should be if you're working professionally on audio, then unfortunately you don't get to make that decision and just move your setup, because it will basically completely destroy your low end. Yeah. So the compromise of having a window behind your speakers is unfortunately then the necessary compromise. Obviously in this particular room, so Lisa's room, I guess this was, she was just very unlucky with the construction of the window, right? So it's not so much about the location of the window. I have a window right behind my speakers. I'm looking at it now, but it's the construction and how it lets bass escape. That was the major problem in this room. Yeah, so it's not just about where the window is, where the doors are. It's also about how it's constructed. It's the same with walls. A simple layer of drywall, if you just have very simple drywall walls with one sheet of drywall on top, that can cause similar issues to window, in fact. But yeah, so it's kind of a long-winded answer to your question. The main thing is that it's a question of priorities, and if you prioritize your sound, unfortunately, you don't have a choice of where to put your listening position. The room chooses it for you. It's your job to figure out where that location is. Yeah, and obviously, if you go through my material on the website, in particular the Phantom Speaker Test Workshop, that will guide you through figuring out where that is and making sure you set up in the right location in your room so you get a good low end right from the start. Yeah? Good question. Moving on. This one is from AVAAs A3. Curious about whether you would expect their efficacy to scale, so I guess the PSI AVAAs, with stacking of additional units. For example, putting 2 units in each corner, high pressure zone as applicable. In a nutshell, absolutely. Yeah. So again, if you watch the review, these function as basically just a standard absorber. These are these are acoustic treatment, right? And so the more acoustic treatment you put in the room, the better it's going to work, right? And in fact, in the review, I compared 2 units versus 1 unit. Yeah. So, and you can see the difference there. But basically, yes, you want to, if you want more effect, you just get more of these units. But I think you're inferring that you're thinking about putting 2 units next to each other. And that's an interesting question. I didn't try that. My instinct tells me that that doesn't work because they basically create this zone or this area of absorption around them. And I'm not entirely sure how they would interact if they're right next to each other. I would assume it's much more preferable to pick different spots in the room with high pressure zones to place these units. Yeah, but in a nutshell, yes, the more absorption you want, the more units you can get, the better it'll work. All right, next up is from Knife Ride Audio. Did not Bag End have an active absorber like this like 10 years ago? They did, and they do. It's not the same type of absorption, right? So the mechanism is different, right? So here's the page for the Bag End E-trap. So it just looks like a box. And if we go to the data sheet, so we can see here that somewhere down here it says it works through acoustic through feedback. So there's a control that controls the amount of damping effect. This can be thought of as a gain of the feedback. Note feedback as how the E-trap works. This should not be confused with instability, which is commonly called feedback in PA systems when a mic is turned up to, well, so we know what feedback means. And also, so it has 2 controls, 2 independent mode damping channels. So basically, this is active in the sense that it's powered, but you only have 2 channels. So 2 frequencies which you can damp, which is, I mean, pretty good already, I would say. But you have to tune it yourself. So you have to set the frequency and the cue of the feedback, I guess, to counteract the wave that you're trying to cancel. So as far as I understand, I haven't tested these yet. I really haven't looked into these in much depth. But as far as I understand, this actually is noise canceling. This is different to the PSI AVAAs, which do this whole impedance thing, right? So they basically create a hole in the wall. Yeah, it's more complicated. It's more complicated to understand, which is why it's more complicated to explain. But yeah, the PSI AVAAs work by reducing the impedance of the air, basically the resistance of the air. So think of it like sound can slip through the window much more easily than if they weren't there. Yeah, maybe that's kind of a way you could explain it. And so the major difference between the Bag End E-trap and the PSI AVAAs is that you have to manually tune the E-trap, while the PSI AVAAs are passive from a control perspective. You don't need to do it. You just switch them on. You don't need to tune them. You don't have to do anything. And they can also basically work at any frequency that hits it in their operating range, which was, I think, 15 hertz to 160 hertz. Yeah? Good question. So this next one is by Montecito Music and Media. The cost needs to come way down for it to become anything but a niche solution for people that can afford it. Super cool device. I'd see why you're saying that, and I saw quite a few comments like this. Unfortunately, that's just not the case. They sell extremely well, as far as I understand, so this is definitely not a niche solution. And you have to see this in the perspective of the development cost and what they actually do, considering their size, right? So, first of all, this is new territory. This is complicated engineering, right? So it's hard. They had a really long development process, and that in itself merits a high cost because it was definitely difficult to develop this technology. The second thing is, again, seeing this in context. In order to control bass in a studio, especially sub-bass, that usually requires an extraordinary amount of treatment. And in really high-end studios, something like 80% of the cost goes into controlling everything below 100 hertz. Yeah. So just think of that. Like I'm telling you, a studio that costs, I don't know, $100,000 to construct, 80,000 of that is going to go into just the low end. So controlling low end always comes at a certain cost, either be it literal money and or space. There is no magic bullet, and it does a lot of what you'd expect a magic bullet to do, especially in the terms of the space used. It's not magic in the sense that it'll just completely fix your low end with just one unit. Yeah, it's still physics. But I think for a lot of people out there, this, if they have a room, like I explained in the review, where you literally just can't fit more passive treatment and you have the money to spend, a lot of people do, yeah, then it's absolutely worth it. Yeah, so of course it's not for everybody, like nothing is, yeah, but it's definitely not overpriced. I don't think so. All right, this next one is from Tiska. Thanks for all the work you did for this video. I appreciate that. This was a lot of work. This is a lot of work. Question, do they only work on a specific band problem within the 15 to 160 hertz or the whole range? So they technically can work on the entire range, but in practice they will only work on the particular frequencies at which you have high pressure, high sound pressure where the unit is located, right? So they need high sound pressure to work. Yeah, so within the 15 to 160 hertz range, anything will be absorbed that has high sound pressure where the unit is located. Yeah, and sometimes that can literally be only one particular room mode, as we see in some of the examples in the review. But it can be more than that. Yeah, so you'll see some of the rooms where one particular room mode is really well damped, but then certain other areas are also damped, and it works more broadband even. Yeah, but it won't ever work entirely on the 15 to 160 hertz range. It'll only work on the frequency ranges that have high sound pressure where the unit is located. All right, next one is from My Ho Will. Man, I'm so bad at reading names. Hey Esco, hope you're doing great. Thank you. Bit of a cold, but that's okay. Do you think you could possibly get Thomas Jouanjean for an interview? I know he won't reveal his proprietary methods, but just sort of vibe and talk about acoustics, typical mistakes, tips and tricks, etc. I'd love to get him on for an interview. Yeah, I was in touch with him a few years ago. I haven't really gotten in touch with him since. If anybody is out there watching this who'd like to put us in touch again, I'd love to talk to Thomas about acoustics. I think he has a lot to share also for us home studio folks without having to reveal any of his proprietary methods or things that he's learned. But I really respect and admire what he does. I think it's fantastic. So I'd love to get him on. Yeah. So any help, much appreciated. Moving on to Moksha Games. What is the difference between the AVAAs C214 and the AVAAs C20? I ordered the AVAAs C214, but there are two apps in the Apple Store. Which one is the correct one? Let's just have a quick look. So here is the app in the Google Play Store, and here is the app in the iOS store, as far as I understand. I'm on Android, so I don't know which one is the right one. When I Googled this, it literally came up right away. I'm not sure which two apps you're talking about, but this, I believe, is it. On the question on the difference between the C214 and the C20, the C20 was developed first, and I believe it is analog. So it's got analog electronics in it, as far as I understand, while the C214 has digital processing, basically has a computer in it, right? So that's the only difference. As far as I understand, they basically work the same, right? So, and the form factor is different, obviously. But apart from that, as far as I understand, they basically work the same. So you can buy either and you should get the same result. I didn't test the analog C20, so I can't say for sure. But from everything I know, this was just a switch in technology in terms of the processing. That's all, right? But in terms of effectiveness, it's the same. Basically, it's still part of the same first generation product, if you will. First, they developed the analog version, and they quickly decided to go digital to make a lot of things easier and more upgradable, probably. Yeah, and so I think going forward, we'll probably continue seeing just a digital version because it's more convenient. All right, this one is from Fred Fox 3851. For those of us with a combination tracking mixing room, my simpleton logic tells me these should help with lowering boominess on the initial recording when tracking. Yes, no, maybe. That's a definite yes. And if you look at the interviews that I did with the engineers of the studios where I tested them, I believe 2 of them actually say that it improved the boominess and kind of averaged out the proximity effect with vocal recording when their performers got too close to the microphone. And one of them also said it made it much easier to select and layer samples. Particularly, I think he was talking about kick drums and 808s, right? So when you're trying to get the whole phase thing working between samples that occupy the low end, it made that a lot easier. Yeah, so it's acoustics, and in that sense, it will help with everything that you do with sound in the room, including recording and sample selection in this case. Yeah, so for sure, yeah, it does help. Definitely helps with tracking as well as mixing. All right, moving on to Audio Rick 841. Thank you for this interview. Thank you. You're very welcome. It helped me understand the science behind it, but also how my AVAA units work. Interesting to learn that the rotation has a larger effect than the placement. I will try tonight. Careful. He didn't say that the rotation has a larger effect. He said that rotation also has an effect when trying placement, when optimizing your placement. Yeah, so for sure, the actual location in the room where you place these units is the main thing that you need to figure out. But once you've nailed down or you've figured out where you have zones of high pressure for the frequencies that you're trying to absorb, it is worth experimenting with rotating the units and also flipping it upside down, basically just to see, to change the location of the microphone in relation to the high pressure zone, right? And that will potentially lead to an improvement in how it picks up sound, I guess, and then does its thing. Yeah, so placement first, yeah, so location first, and then you can experiment with rotation and also flipping it upside down, I guess. Yeah, good question. All right, this one is on Brewback Time. Hi, Esco. Are you trying some deepfake or AI-based replacement? Both the audio and the video are quite weird in that frontal shot you are using outside the interviews. Funny roads, too. Yeah, so a lot of people commented on this. Look, I wanted to get this video out. I needed to get it out. And so the quality lacked a bit. But it is me in the video. I recorded the video with this phone. And this is basically at my brother's place. That is a real Rhodes in the background on the right. Everything you see in there is real. Everything you hear is real. The only thing that I did was I abused the studio sound function in my editor a bit because the audio was whack. I just didn't have a microphone, but I wanted to get the video out. So let me just show you because it's actually quite interesting. So here's the editor. And so that's me. I recorded it with my phone. That's a Rhodes. That's the Stage Vintage 1, the Korg. And let me just show you how the audio sounds without the studio sound.
AVAAA C214 active bass absorbers in 10 different studios. I measured the rooms, I documented everything, and I made a video about it. I also sat down with the guy who designed these units and did a proper deep dive interview.
Okay, so as you can tell, like, the sound was pretty bad. Yeah, I just didn't have a microphone. Like I said, I wanted to get this video out. I needed to get it done. And I think we now know where the limits of this studio sound functionality are. It's definitely the last time I'm going to push it that far. But you know what? Just for the sake of it, I'm not going to do any processing on the audio that you're hearing right now in this video, except for the compression. Yeah, so this is what it sounds like in my studio. I usually also apply the same studio sound effect at 70% to these recordings because it just cleans it up a little bit. But just for the sake of it, I'm not going to do that in this video. So this is basically raw audio apart from compression, no EQ, yeah, no studio sound, nothing else going on. So there you go. Yeah, some raw audio for you. So you know that I do know how to record audio. But my priorities sometimes, especially with these videos, are elsewhere, or rather sometimes I have different priorities than absolutely making sure that the audio quality is totally perfect. Yeah, oftentimes it's more about actually getting it out there, making sure that people get the video, get the information. Yeah, and sometimes I just don't have the means of my studio to do this, and that's when these things happen. But yeah, it's all real. It's not AI. I did read off a teleprompter. Yeah, so because the video is kind of cuts between me and the interviews. In order to get that right, I needed to prepare a full script beforehand. And so this is me reading off of a teleprompter instead of improvising or basically reading or improvising off of bullet points as I usually do for my videos. This one right now is completely free. I have no script whatsoever. I'm just doing this off the top of my head. But yeah, so that's the only difference. Yeah, it's just AI optimized studio sound in Descript. That's all it is. Everything else is real. So that's it for this video. And that's it for my PSI review series. If you've stuck with me all the way to this point, thank you very much for watching. This was a lot of work. A lot of people asked me over the past few years what I thought about the PSI AVAAs. And so I went all out and did the biggest review that I possibly could. Yeah, and obviously I wanted to make sure I get everything out of the material that I collected. Yeah, so I made this whole series about it. So again, thank you for watching, everybody who's followed me so far. As always, let's get back to learning to trust our ears and having fun making music in the studio. I'll see you in the next video.